Dr. Lomax's vision to give willingly, and what's my pastor say? Come willingly and with an open and happy heart and give. And that's what they've done to our community.
All righty. So I'm going to go to you, Steve, because I want to get back to this notion of wealth creation, this notion of looking at this wealth gap, because it is it's really startling. It says that one of the things, and actually I've heard this phrase over and over the last 2 days, but my dad used to say we live in a capitalistic society without capital. And we know that. And this article that was in The Nation that talks about the wealth gap, it says, according to a study published by Demos last year, the median income for whites in 2011 was about 50% higher than it was for blacks and Latinos. But whites' median household wealth was about 16 times greater. So I mean, these are objective research numbers and studies that just are continually reinforcing this incredible chasm that exists between black wealth and white wealth. And so I want you to speak to, what we can do around this accessing capital, because I think that's one of the things. If you're a small business, if you're, a new business, how do you access that capital when, we generally, it's stacked against us. The deck is stacked.
Okay. Couple of things. One, that wealth gap, and it was mentioned earlier, is generational. So every time I see an escalator or I see a moving sidewalk in the airport, in an airport, it reminds me of how that gap started and how it's continuing. So if you try to walk on the floor that's not moving and somebody else is on the floor that is moving, that's the genesis of a lot of that wealth gap. It's hard to keep up with those people moving. Then if you put it on an incline, which is what we've been struggling with for so long, and they're on the escalator going up, and you're walking up the steps, you better be in good shape to keep up with them. And then even if you keep up with them, by the time you get to the top of the steps, you're out of breath. And that's when the competition really begins, is when you get to the top of the steps. So we have a little bit of a disadvantage.
It's just starting when you get up there.
Get up there, yep. So we've got to get into better shape. So how do we get into better economic shape? And so we need to do a couple of things. We heard about transitioning from one career to another, and then also having a different mindset. But even sometimes if we do that, if the capital sources don't exist, we've got a great idea and we can't get it funded. So where and how, to your point, do you find the capital? Capital, it's been said that capital chases good ideas. But really what I've discovered is capital chases good people with a decent idea. All right, so, and how do those people with the capital get to meet the people with the good ideas? And it all goes back to something else Dr. Lomax and I talked about a lot, and that's relationships. So if you go to a bank and ask for money when you need it most, they're probably going to tell you no. But if you go to the bank or banker and establish a relationship in advance of needing the money, your job is to make it very difficult for the capital source to say no to you. It's hard to say no to a person when you have a relationship with them. It is very difficult. Now yes, race gets in the way, as well. But remember what I talked about before. Now, if you believe that there is a God, and I think we all do, that's different than believing what God will do for you. We can't change a person's heart, but God can. But we have to trust that God will do that. Now, I'm telling you what I've used. These are some of my secrets to raise capital, right? Because there have been people that have said no, 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 no. And so I got to turn that part over to God and say, you touch their hearts. And then he says back to me, be persistent so the harvest won't pass. So we can't get all upset and say it's racism when they tell us no one time. You got to be willing to ask 100 times to the point where you just wear them suckers down to where they can't say no no more. Because every time you ask them, you are developing a relationship and getting closer to them. So the moment you think about starting your business, before you actually start thinking about it, you should begin to think of capital sources that are available to you. Now, then that means the next thing, and then I'll shut up, is you've got to start thinking, looking, and use the internet to figure out where the capital sources are. We're, inside of all of our communities, we are actually surrounded by 2 levels of capital sources. One is ourselves, right? So there's this pooling effect. You know, you get 5 people to do $100. Isn't that what Reverend Sullivan did, the 360 plan? 1036 plan, right. See, I'm thinking 360 because you got to do it every day. And, but it's just a basic, simple concept of raising capital. Then once you get that first source in, then you can go to the bigger sources for even more money. But you cannot be afraid of their faces. And oftentimes we are. And you just can't be afraid, and you can't be afraid of no. You've got to look at the no and say, thank you for that no. Don't hate them for saying no to you. Tell them to get ready and let them know that you're going to be back. And it's amazing what that will do. So I think the capital is there. We just have to get to the point, too, where we trust each other enough and figure out how to develop those relationships soon enough and fast enough. And you should really be developing a new relationship every single day. The next thing you should be doing is broadening and deepening an existing relationship every single day, because you don't know if the person sitting next to you either has a connection to somebody else that has the money, or they might have the money, or God may give them the money to give to you, because their blessing is really for you. Now, all of this is coming from things that I have experienced over time and life, and I wish I could make it plainer and clearer, but just keep asking. Don't let them scare you away. Keep going to the bank and saying, I got it. And the banks aren't in the business of taking risk. You have to get to venture capitalists and private equity folks in order to get to that risk. And I'll tell you this, they are actually looking for you, for us, and our ideas. Because creativity, particularly in this technology-enabled world, trumps everything else. That's one thing about technology. Technology is colorblind. And so you use the technology, all this stuff. You should not be walking around with one of these and not out relationshiping people and trying to figure out how I'm going to get to the next person doing something else. You know, that's nice to download your music and do all that kind of stuff and text people and tweet. Well, what if you could make a penny off of every tweet? You know, that's the way we got to think. Somebody else might invent the technology, but how do I eat off of it? And I think that's the kind of stuff Dr. Lomax, saw well in advance of us. Kenny Gamble was doing that with every record that sold, and we still hum and sing and whistle his songs.
As he smiles.
Cha-ching. I like that. Thanks, Steve. I'm going to ask one last question that I want everybody to answer, and then if we have any time, we can take some questions from the audience. But one of the things that I think is one of my dad's greatest legacies is his community consciousness, was his commitment to the African American community, whether it was through philanthropic means and cultural institutions, or WURD, which is definitely, I think, a very powerful part of his legacy. I said in a staff meeting recently to my staff, I said, I am very clear that this radio station would not be here if it was not for the steadfast commitment and support of my father and my mother. It's very clear, because we've had 13 years to figure this out. Most black businesses do not have 13 years to stay in business and figure things out. We still struggle. And that's why I'm very grateful to the people who are here, the people who are listening, the people who are online joining the membership campaign. It is really, really important for us to be able to grow and not just tread water, you know, because it's hard. You know, everybody up here is saying business is creating and building a business is very difficult. But I think that one of the things that was very powerful is that my father, he never forgot or got disconnected from his roots in South Philly and in the black community, and Word was a very important part of that. So, and I just want to, as an aside, say that I think one of the most powerful examples of that was in 1994, he purchased the farm / plantation where his great-grandmother was enslaved in King William, Virginia. And so that, and we still own that property, and to me that is, you know, it just exemplifies the real estate aspect, but also the fact that history and culture and ownership is so important. So I'll start with you, Kenny. You know, this notion of community connection and community investment and community consciousness, how does that show up? I mean, I know it shows up a lot in your work and in your life, but how do you feel that impacts your ability to grow your business and perpetuate a wealth creation plan?
Well, I look at community development as being my business, you know, and that is the business that we're in. We're in the business of building up the African American community. And someone just said something about a business that you have to develop one, but the main thing is how do you sustain a business?
Yep.
And you can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you can't sustain that business and use business principles that apply to everyone, no matter who you are, black, white, Asian, it's all about business. It's about either profit or loss. If you're losing money, you got to figure out how long. You said 13 years, so you got to figure out how long can you lose money, you know, without falling and crumbling. So I think the community is the business, no matter what you think. You're part of the African American community, most of us here, and you're not going to get out of that. You know, I mean, you can want to get out of it all you want, but you're not going to get out of it. You're in it until the day you die. And so you better get used to one thing, is that you better build that community. Because if we built the African American community, that is our business. That is the way for us to be successful, because you have everybody, you have 650,000 African Americans in the city of Philadelphia. 650,000. We're the largest group in the city of Philadelphia. Everybody's got to eat, they got to sleep, they have food, clothing, and shelter. And so what's stopping us? What is stopping us from owning our own homes? What's stopping us from creating factories? What's stopping us from planning together? Because our problem is that we do not work together. And I think that we're getting to that point now. I think time is going to get to that point now, because we don't have no other place to go. And when you start to look at the political landscape today, something getting ready to go down. And so as African American people, we better try to do the best we can. One last thing, Dr. Lomax, Mr. Lewis, who was our barber when we was growing up on 15th Street, he told me when I was a grown man, he said, Kenny, you know what? He said, you're doing good. He said, but remember this. He said, no matter how many new friends you get, don't forget your old friends. And Dr. Lomax is a perfect example of that. He never forgot his old friends, you see, no matter how many new friends and business people that he would come in touch with. The greatest gift that Dr. Lomax has given to the African American community, in my opinion, is this radio station.
Amen.
You do not have any other means of communication except for the Philadelphia Tribune and WURD and maybe a couple local newspapers. So we must take care of Word and be conscious of it. And so that's what I think.
I'll slide you. I'll slide you 100.
Give me
later.
100 under the table. Under the table. That's a commercial.
Susan Taylor, this question of community engagement, consciousness, collective work and responsibility, and how that connects to our business and our wealth and all of those things.
So I'm going to bring it back to healthcare. And Mr. Gamble talked about the health centers that Dr. Lomax created for our communities in South Philadelphia and West Philadelphia and Northwest. And those health centers took care of people in our communities. Dr. Lomax, when he sold those health centers, he sold it to a black man, another black man, to carry on that tradition. And then when he went into the prison building business and healthcare in the prisons, who unfortunately predominantly makes up many of the prison populations, African Americans. So again, taking care of the African American community on many different levels, the micro level and the macro level, and turning some of that back over to the African American community. When I was looking at businesses and entrepreneurship, to me, again, it was centered on the skin of color community, creating the centers in New York, creating the skin line. So that is part of the legacy that he passed on to me of giving back to our community and helping our people in regard to health care.
Excellent. Keith Leapart, give us some community connection, collective, engagement.
So
Black power.
One of the things I remember Dr. Lomax sharing with me, he would often say, I'm unapologetically black, right? Meaning that he was not afraid of his blackness and being, as successful as he got, as many rooms as he had been in the city of Philadelphia with, people that don't look like us, he was not afraid to wear his blackness, right? And so that was reflective in his community involvement and, to Kenny's point, through this radio station. One of the main reasons, that we're all here today is because of his commitment to this radio station. We know how committed Dr. Lomax was to making sure that information was available to our community, that it was untainted, unfiltered, right? What is happening in our community could be expressed. Your voice could be heard. If you had a complaint, and you hear people on the radio, sometimes they have a complaint, right? If you had a complaint, it could come through on these airways. And he was so committed to that. And I'm sure, to the chagrin of, the family is already wealthy, they could have had more wealth. You understand what I'm saying? Like, he did not have to use this as a true philanthropic investment for so long to could get to the point that could be self-sustaining. So I would say, for me, to see him, his strength and character, he never forgot the struggle. I always believe if you go through the struggle, it's really hard to be disconnected to it and forget the struggle.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap things up with you, Mr. Steve Sanders.
All right.
Community connection, consciousness.
I think it's all wrapped up in one's legacy. Dr. Lomax left us an example of a phenomenal legacy, and that means having what you've done live beyond you and share it with others. And we've all been blessed with a legacy, whether we believe it or not. It's just a matter of us trying to determine how big of a legacy we're going to leave, which means doing something for someone else and understand that giving equals receiving. It's a mathematical law. Not that you give in order to get something back, but if you give the right way, you'll get it back tenfold, and he understood that.
Absolutely. So I want to thank our panel, and I want to invite people, I think we might have time for a couple of questions, but I want to thank Steve Sanders, Keith Leapart, Susan Taylor, and Kenny Gamble. Thank you very much for and I want to thank you also for just lifting my father's memory up and sharing your experiences, your reflections. I think I know it means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to my mother, my sister, and my brothers who are here. So if there are any questions, I think we can take maybe 2 or 3. Thank you. Yeah, we got Sonia Sanchez in the house. Woo! We got Nick Talaferro in the house. think we got Lloyd Cummings in the house. Got Roland Williams in the house. Got Trudy Haynes in the house. Yes.
Hi,
Yes,
my
sir.
name is Reggie McGlawn. My family do a lot of business out of Philadelphia, and we do what you say, 365 days a year. But my concern is we do well within our community, but we're stagnated when it comes to people in politics or people in like powerful places to get into that arena. It's like as being an African American, we're 44%, 45% of Philadelphia, but we're a minority when it comes to getting contracts and getting business from large corporations. I would like to know what are your ideas and your thoughts of how we can get to that next level?
Who wants to take that? Go ahead, Steve.
So,
Keith.
I'll jump in and say I think one of our issues. I said before our problems aren't political; they're economic. That's the only time that I would double back and say that's where it becomes a little bit political, right? So Atlanta, which we all cite as a model, they had Maynard Jackson who made sure that African Americans were at the table in a substantial way, right? On the airport contract as they rebuilt Atlanta, and that came from the mayor's seat, right? And so we've had African American mayors, and you can consider this a criticism or not, but I would say we haven't done enough in that seat where you are willing to be a one-term mayor, right? I mean, I think part of the problem is when politics is your job, you are looking to keep your job. But when politics is a mission and a passion and you are truly there to help people, you are willing to be one and done. And that's what we need. We need a one and done person in that seat who is willing to take the risks that are necessary. And this is not about anything illegal, but to take a stand and say that we represent 46% of the city. We have businesses that are capable of doing a job. Why can't we make sure they're part of these deals? So I would say that is the one area where I haven't seen enough strength and leadership in that critical position. I would say the mayor's seat.
All right.
Can I say another thing?
Yes, Susan Taylor.
Another thing that we often don't do enough is partnerships. And it goes back to what Steve said, building relationships. So I don't know what your business is, but you should be able to identify potential partners, many of whom you won't know. But sometimes you can call and make an appointment and introduce yourself and do it again and again so that when opportunities arise, they'll think, oh, what was that guy's name? Let me find his card. So sometimes we can go to the next level through partnerships with other communities.
Excellent. One more. Yes. Oh,
My name is O, and I'm from the North Philadelphia area. In a prayer that I had, one of the things that I heard was that until we have a strong black nation, there is no foundation, because we are the foundation. And so in building the partnerships that you're speaking to, in living in North Philadelphia, I live in what's called the least, the last, and the lost. And these are God's children. And so my question is, how do we begin to work in a way that we are maturing our least, our last, and our lost, so that they become the strength of our nation?
thank you for that question.
I
I think
just say
Steve
real-
is scooching up to the mic.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
real quickly. God specializes in the least, the last, and the lost, which means there's a lot of opportunity that, again, we might not be able to see. So what we've got to do is put on another lens and say, what's in there from a seed of greatness? And let's filter out what everybody else might think that they see, and then ask God to show me what's inside of the least, the last, and the lost, because that's when he does his best work. Now, what that means from an investment perspective is Warren Buffett buys things that are undervalued. That's what he likes to specialize in. And generally, the least, the last, and the lost are considered undervalued. So when you look at what Brother Gamble did in terms of real estate, he was buying low and getting the opportunity to make those things grow. So I would step back from that community and look at it and say, where are the pearls inside of the least, the last, and the lost? So create a fund that's called the least, the last, and the lost fund. And then ask people to invest in the least, the last, and the lost fund because it's the greatest value. So I think we have to change our perspective on a lot of it. Like those the choice of words. It's interesting.
We're gonna take, we're gonna take one more yes? Hey,
Could
Sister Sonia.
this audience, could the panel tell us, this audience and people on the radio, the difference between wealth and money?
Or
Wealth and money.
Wealth and yeah.
Wealth, yeah.
Yeah, money is perishable. Wealth is everlasting.
What is the difference between wealth and money as far as we are concerned as African Americans, you know? That article in The Nation talks about, you know, the difference between the wealth
The
and how
gap.
long it takes us. But you've got to tell us what is wealth, and you're not telling us what is wealth. So how can we get to wealth if we don't really know what wealth is, or what that article in The Nation, if we really read it carefully enough, talks about also too?
So y'all pulling
Thank
out the
you.
big guns with Sister Sanchez.
No,
She
I'm
just
not
said,
trying to be,
yeah.
but I mean, the audience is
Yeah.
listening, you
Yep.
know?
Well,
Yep.
you know, I think that somebody talk. Oh, I think that the difference between wealth and money is that, you know, most people wake up every day and they go to make money. They go to make money. And when you're wealthy, you wake up every day, but your money is actually working for you. And you turn the tables, because once you can get money to work for you, then you don't have to really worry about working for someone. Because if it's just money you're after, then you got to get a job or something. But if you're looking at potential of being wealthy, being able to pass that money down through generations, being able to, and the additional things that come with wealth and freedom of thinking, because you're not worried about paying your bills anymore because the money is working for you. But the thing I look at is, how do you, when you say wealth, take it out of the money category for a minute, and what are your values? What are your values? What is the real wealth in your life? Is it your family? Is it your belief? Is it your community? Is it your people? And in order to get that freedom of thinking and not worrying about picking up a paycheck or getting fired or whatever, you have to sacrifice. No matter who you are, you have to sacrifice so that you can accumulate, in my view, enough money so that the money actually works for you and you're not working for money.
Can I'll jump in. I'll say,
Can I just say one thing?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
thank you.
Because no, because you know, I think that one of the things my father used to say is, it's not what you make, it's what you save. So if you have $1 million but you owe $1,000,001, you're broke.
You're broke.
You're broke. And I think that is part of what messes us up as a community. You know, we're flossing and driving fancy cars and
right.
big houses and
right.
we're technically broke, even though we got a lot of money. So I think that too is part of the difference between wealth and income, is the ability. Now, and this article, I'm going to stop in a second, but this article says, wealth also provides an important cushion against unexpected shocks, things like temporary job losses or unexpected medical bills. If you've got some wealth, you can weather the storm without getting over your head
That's
in
right.
debt. So it absolutely.
Say that again, Sonia.
It keeps your children from getting
From
murdered,
getting murdered if you have wealth. You know.
Well,
perhaps.
So, and I would say just speaking
I don't
to
know.
no,
I don't know.
no. I mean, speaking to the audience, I would say my quick synopsis of what the difference between wealth and money. You know, money is something that can be lost. Wealth is something that is transferred, right? So wealth is transferred on to generation, whereas money, you can lose money. You can't lose wealth. If you're wealthy, that is something that is transferred.
No, you can lose wealth.
True.
Well, yeah,
You
can
can
lose
you
it
can
now.
lose anything.
Right.
Yeah, you can lose anything.
I mean, I think that, you know, if you're I don't know, the Rockefellers or something, maybe
Right.
it's harder to lose. But black people,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a difference between black wealth and white wealth.
Very true. Yeah.
You know, black everything is fragile.
Right. Absolutely.
Except our skin.
Yeah.
Any one more question? Oh, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is James Abram, and I am president and founder of a veteran group called Point Man Soldiers Heart Ministry. And I come to say this afternoon, don't let us get sidetracked. So, yeah, we had black mayors in the office in Philadelphia, but we got a city council that's predominant black.
That's true.
Who don't, when I say don't do anything, I'm not talking about all of them, but I'm just saying, with their input, we could have black men, young and old black men, on some of these jobs that we pay taxes for the city, and with the electrical union, who will not even hire black men and women. We have a city council who has the power to override them. But our city council, all of them, because none of them talking about it, they're not even pushing against the Mayor Kinney, Mayor Nutter, Mayor Good, Mayor, what's his name, all the black mayors. This been in operation ever since it was a black mayor in the office, even before. The city council is not doing their jobs. And what we need to do is get rid of their backsides.
Oh, boy.
Because they're not doing anything.
All right. Well, I think that we'll take one more. We'll take one more question, and then we're gonna wait. Can we? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I think the panel will stick around if you have questions. I know you gotta go. Okay.
My name is Millie Jackson, and I'm from West Philly. When he talked, Kenny Gamble talked about the community. When I first moved into my community, it was horrible. But first I was loud. Doesn't work. Then I started to pray about picking up the paper. It starts with the little things in your community. Picking up the paper, like Kenny Gamble say. Ghetto really is in your mind. All of a sudden, my neighborhood became beautiful. But then we had a lot of senior citizens. Now we got the older people who are moving in, and they don't care. I still pick up the paper, just like I went in this bathroom right here. There was paper on the floor. I picked up the paper because that is me. You know you put the paper on the floor. Why do you have the paper on the floor? It's the little things that count. I call City Hall. A lot of times we have a big old hole in our street. I have talked to some of the people who are in this room right now. Do you know I still have a hole? You know how many calls I have made? At least 10 calls for that same hole. You're on the list, Miss Jackson, but we haven't gotten help yet. And teach your children how to save their money. It's not how much money you make, it's whether you save something out of the money that you make.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to, one more question to the doctor. Is your line natural, your cosmetic?
So my answer to that question is the following. Poison ivy is natural, and you wouldn't put that on your skin. So you have to be careful how you define natural.
So we're
not organic.
Okay. So just in the interest of our panel's time and your time, and we've got Brother Shamari who's coming up next, we're going to close the panel out right now. I want to really thank Kenny Gamble, Susan Taylor, Keith Leapart, and Steve Sanders for being with us today. I hope folks will continue to stick around. We're going to be here until 7 o'clock. We've got the Shamari Show coming on in a few minutes, and we've got Nick Talafaro will be on from 5 to 7. And actually, Anthony Wright, who is the gentleman who was falsely imprisoned for 25 years, will be coming to the Founders Day celebration at about 5 o'clock today for Nick's show, and we're going to present him with some gifts to just try and address the heartache that he's experienced. But I also want to make sure everybody picks up save the date. We got 2 great events coming up on September 22nd and October 22nd. So please mark your calendars, and if you're not a member, I don't know if you need any more inspiration, but please join our Forward membership. And thank you all for coming very much. Have a good afternoon.
We're working with you, Keith. So let's make sure that